Vivek?
Oh, so I was on mute, sorry. So on behalf of Co-Lead International, SanchitSmriti Trust and VivekPadalia, I welcome all of you in the summit and thank you very much for accepting on a very short notice to be part of this show. And I am sure that all of us, whosoever being part of this summit as a participant, as an organizer, as a panelist, and other members of the community will have a lot of learning, exploration, and insights on the topic. And as we know that this freedom is like everything is changing all around us. So freedom, the concept, the perception is also changing in the 21st century. And then now we in this summit we are going to see how this is going to we will able to come up with something new with new thought process, new ideas, new discussions, new debate around it, what is going to come and how it is going to be seen. So with this, I would like thank you all for being part of our program. So Swati, can you please, before going ahead, can I share the video?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sharing with you one video of Vivek Padalia, and I think it perfectly fits into the vision and mission of this summit also.
You not shared the screen.
Yeah. Vivek, share the screen.
Okay, 1 second. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay, so before going further, so I would request Swati, please share the our core team members so that we can introduce with the team. Thank you. So, in this summit, this is the core team who work day in day out to ensure that we are able to conduct this summit on time and with the enthusiasm and the passion the team has shown. So Swati, she is here with us, managing and coordinating the whole session in next 2 days. And then we have Dr. Deeksha Nagar. She is here with us, and then Dinesh Nagar. He's Dinesh, HS Dinesh. So he's going to be part of this one of the panel in the plenary session. So we are not focusing too much on the introduction part. We will share in during next 2 days. We will come to know that more about these people, how they worked, and how we see this whole efforts are going on. So with this, Swati, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vivek. I just wanted to add that this event wouldn't have been possible without the program partners that we have, with the Co-Lead International and the SanchitSmriti, who have partnered with us in making this possible, and we do have representation from the teams. Also, I wanted to add that all panelists are doing this. They believe in the cause, and they are doing this pro bono. Also, 70% of the the proceeds that we get in these 2 days session will be going for a social cause. So without much ado, I think I like to jump into and introduce the panelists. I'll have to read it out because I don't want to miss anybody. So the first session that is on freedom in everyday life and intercontinental dialogue. We have with us Chet Sisk. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. He's a futurist, inspirational speaker, author, and founder of Universal Basic Resources. He's a transformation management consultant specializing in helping organizations and individuals thrive and succeed in a time of massive change. Welcome, Chet. We also have with us Sushma Sharma from India. She's a founder, CEO, the spirit, and an ever-evolving co-creator of Resonate Consulting. A passionate learner, she has learned through 27 years of intense and expansive work in the field of organization development. Sushma sees herself as a learning partner, mentor, and a coach in helping leaders, leadership teams, and organizations build competencies, learning abilities, and nimbleness for achieving purposeful performance. Welcome, Sushma. We also have with us Uma Devi Gopal Das from USA, and I think she shifts between USA and Singapore. She's a leader in global workforce transformation for businesses. Today, she sits on 2 boards, including TEDx Smile High, a leading independent organizer of TED Talks, and Co-Lead International. She was awarded Woman of the Year by International Women's Association for her excellence and passion in bettering leadership, and she's also graduated from the University of Singapore. Welcome, Uma Devi. We also have Professor Mahapatra with us, who's also moderating this session. He's a professor of practice, OB and HRM, and the chairperson of MBA Weekend Program at IIM Bangalore. Professor Mahapatra is an accomplished author and an editor, and published and presented numerous papers in various national and international conferences. Just wanted to add, so before we kind of start, just wanted to add the views that is expressed are completely personal, in the personal capacity of the panelist, and does not necessarily reflect that of VivekPadalia. So over to you, Professor Mahapatra. You need to unmute yourself. Vivek, can you help? Because I think you've muted everyone. even after all the testing, we do get into these technical issues. Just bear with us for a minute. I'm sure we'll be able to
I
sort
think
this
we're
out.
there now.
Yeah, Vivek, you need to unmute Professor Mahapatra.
Hello, Vivek.
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you, Mr.
May I request
Professor.
you can unmute all. In fact, all of
Yeah.
us are, I saw a smaller group, so we can all have the discipline of unmuting and muting whenever it's needed.
Yes,
So,
yes, I'm doing. So now I did that. All can unmute themselves. So yeah, but keep on mute if not required. Yeah, please. Thank you.
yeah, okay. So, good morning, good evening, and welcome to all of you. Thank you very much, Swati, for very nice way of introducing and setting the context. That was very, my hair stood up when you were reading the context for the seminar and the roundtable. I think we'll straight keep moving. The way we have structured is we have a very diverse panel and very rich experience. So first part, we'll keep it in a little semi-structured way. We'll first request Chet to start off, Uma to start off. Then Chet will follow, then Susma will follow, then I'll come. Then we'll take it open round. That's the way we'll plan. And last 15 minutes, we'll keep it open for question answer. That's our broad plan. So over to Uma, and broadly 4 minutes, and then if necessary only I'll intervene, or I'll not say interfere. Welcome
Mute
Uma, and go ahead. Thank you.
mute me if I go beyond 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're from. I'm in Denver, Colorado. And I'm from Singapore, but I move around the world quite a lot in oil and gas and gold mining and management consulting. Colorado's home now. So I'm very honored to talk about freedom. And coming from Singapore, it's a very controlled city-state capital. And now that I live in USA, the polarization in the freedom is daunting. Now I have all the freedom. It's freedom of rights and speech. In Singapore, it's a lot about censorship and protection, and you have to watch what you're doing. You've got to watch the big brother all the time. So when I moved to the US, you'd think that I would go a bit more chaotic and do whatever I want. But actually, I was very controlled. It's a lot of discipline still in you to think about where freedom lies within you and what's comfortable for you. We have a great list of panelists, and they'll talk about some of these things that I'm saying, as well as I think for me personally, freedom is a double-edged sword, right? It could be a supreme gift if you have it. It could be a shackle of power if you're chasing it. Freedom comes at a cost. So be careful how you approach it. Be careful how you shackle yourself or trap yourself. If you want to talk about freedom, you have to understand what are you trying to break free from. So when I coach, a lot of the times what I'm trying to tell the people I coach is, if you feel like you're chasing a freedom, whether it's rights or time or more space, whatever is it that you want freedom from, what is the trap? What is the restraint? What's the constraint? So for me specifically, my individual liberty, my individual freedom at the cost of someone else's life is not important. It's for me, if I use that freedom for the benefit of others, that's success to me. So be very wise in how you choose your freedom. When you have freedom, you have to share it with someone. So your spouse, your peers, your boss, it comes at a cost. It's not like you have absolute freedom. Just like absolute power can corrupt absolute freedom, it's actually kind of an illusion in my mind. I don't think there is such a thing, because we're not a no-man island. We rely on other people. We rely on the planet for sustenance. So that is really what my take is on freedom is, if freedom clashes with security and stability of a society, is it worth it? And that's a question I would pose to the audience, right? What are you fighting for? Do I still have more time? 1 more minute. Okay, I'll go on, sir. So the question I would also ask the audience to think about is, instead of freedom, think about free will, right? Freedom is a state, right? It's an external state of having your ability to do what you want. Free will gives you the ability to work within constraints, within a circumstance and situation. So for me, instead of fighting over how much freedom I have, I need to break free from this, I need to break free from that, I see what my free will is telling me to do within that situation, right? And my free spirit is what I always develop in order to be successful and happy. For me, happiness comes with giving, and it's not about taking. I still have more time.
Thank you. No, I think we'll switch over to, thanks Suma, very nicely put. I think let's move on to Chet and we'll come back to you again. Chet, over to you and your perspective in a global context. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm, first of all, happy Independence Day, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this celebration. I am colleagues with Uma, the speaker you just heard, and with the organizer, Deeksha. We're colleagues with Co-Lead Internationals, an organization dedicated to truly to freedom, but our big emphasis is to get the rest of the world, or get the world to rethink systems so that we think about true freedom on the road ahead. And I come from an African-American experience. Most of you may have heard about some of the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening in the States. A lot of that is based around the fact that we were denied freedom and have regularly been denied in a situation of denied freedom for the past 400 years. So freedom takes on a very personal and an intimate experience for me. So when I think of freedom, it's not a painting on the wall. And I like in our earlier discussion, Sushma had said something to the effect of Boon or Bane about what freedom is. Either it's a boon for us, it's something great, or something that hangs around our neck like an albatross. And I find that freedom is somewhere in between as well, that if you don't take responsibility for your actions, then what happens is that freedom does truly, as Uma indicated, becomes a bane. It becomes problematic because we have responsibilities. There's this giant responsibility that goes along with the experience of being able to do the things that you would like. So from an African-American perspective, I can tell you that it is probably a golden word. It is, freedom is everything. And it helps you, just having different kinds of experience. All of us have different kinds of experience, helps us to develop the lens in which we view freedom. And from my particular perspective, if one of us is not free, none of us are free. And we create an environment, from my particular perspective, I can truly say that all must be free in order to have true freedom. Otherwise, you have this kind of strange society where some enjoy the benefits of life at the expense of the many, and that's not sustainable. So true freedom is giving everybody this ability to be able to plan 2 years out. I ask everyone that same question: can you plan 2 years out? If you cannot plan 2 years out, it means that you live in a state of anxiety, and that's not freedom. That level of everyday anxiety, what we call the precariat kind of anxiety, where you're in a precarious situation and you're working also in that situation, it's not sustainable. It takes its toll, and you can't plan 2 years out. I know that sounds like a simple definition, but quite frankly, if you ask anybody that, they'll tell you if they cannot plan 2 years out, it means that there is something that is taking their freedom. So it becomes really important for us to make freedom personal. As I said earlier, it's not a painting on a wall. It's not something over there. It's not a document. It is a life experience, and being able to live that life fully and with great expression, and being able to, as Uma indicated earlier, being able to leverage that freedom for the greater good. When all of those things are in place, then you truly do have at least a society and a personal life on the road to freedom. Thank you.
Thanks, Chet. I think very powerful, and you did bring up the larger purpose behind freedom, and you said freedom for all. Otherwise, restricted freedom is not any freedom. I think let's go back to Susma with a global perspective, Indian perspective, and integrating both. Yeah, thanks. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Chet, you seem to have taken many of my ideas and put them in your words. So, and that's freedom without my knowing. And so to me, I think my personal value and the kind of person I am is very dependent on this sense of freedom. And without that, I think I can't be who I am. And freedom, unfortunately, has become a nice fashion word. Everybody talks about freedom, but when it comes to practicing at the individual level, with the choices that you make, as well as the choices that you allow others to make, is a big vacuum. Because it is good to give lectures around freedom, but it is so difficult to practice freedom in the real sense of the word, in the way I listen to another individual, in the way I provide the expansive space to people to talk, and the way I control them or I don't control them. I think it is very important at an individual level how I am using sense of freedom and helping people to get encouraged to speak up at all times and speak up their truth, even as a child, and not to stop. Because what I find in my work and the way I meet people, that our minds are slave, despite having freedom outside, to our conditioning, to the way we have been brought up, to the way our education is, the way we look at the success factor. And so therefore, the way we keep quiet and not speak up and not use that sense of freedom to cultivate a new culture, you know? So to me, the freedom is I think Uma said about two-edged sword. It is, because there is freedom and there is sense of responsibility. It's not as if freedom is like free for all kind of stuff, but there is a very intense process about what is it I'm responsible for and what is it that I take accountability for. I can't keep blaming system, government, all this kind of stuff while I am following the traditional way of thinking all along, the way I treat gender, the way I have perceptions about women or men, or the way I look at sexual orientation, and I haven't changed. I am still under the chains of old thinking plenty of times. And to me, freedom is also to value and respect your thinking and my thinking, and not only have another kind of a philosophy which we need to push down the throat of people. So to be able to accept that the choice another individual is making is up to him. I cannot assert or be aggressive about it. And what I find is that some of the people in freedom in our country, for example, and I work with various cultures, and in almost every culture, there are certain protocols that happen. Now, at one level is the respect or the trust process that is partnering the freedom. But another side is that, very subtly we are creeping, especially our intellectuals today are keeping quiet. Or they say that the science and technology, these are free choices, and the religion and faith is not. But the fact is that today even science is being bought over by the corporates. And so therefore funding is done on the kind of questions that you ask. And therefore we notice all these things. And to me, when I notice, how do I question? This asking these questions is to me a sense of freedom, and then to take the consequences of that questioning that we do. So I really want to, even as a leader, I find that plenty of people hold back rather than being spontaneous and taking the consequences of their own spontaneity. And so to me, the freedom has so many dimensions. And it's only when I live this value every day in my family, in my friendship, in my work, in my work that I offer to others, I think the co-creation cannot happen. So to me, freedom is is such a beautiful fragrance. When we allow ourselves to experience it fully, that's when you can say that I am alive. Otherwise, there are so many parts of us that are so marginalized, and we don't even have the courage to allow them to come into play. And they become marginalized. And this is the way our society is marginalized, the way a lot of classes are marginalized. And so to me, freedom is when I want to create the same expansive space and container for everyone that I come in contact with.
Thanks, Uma. I think very nicely put. I thought you started off very subtly and went into macro, but you didn't leave the self. You put self account, you say with freedom, also accountability, responsibility. You bring in trust as well as responsiveness. You know, that word is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, world is together. I think all of us together, starting with Uma, Chet, and you are communicating. The word that came to my mind is psychological safety. In your own way, in behavioral science, you use the word psychological safety. Do I provide the safety? First of all, do I get the space to get the psychological safety, and then I can be myself? And you said, don't end there, also become responsive. Three of you are talking about not a right, also a responsibility. So I remembered my childhood days. Now I'll speak as a panelist. My father was a freedom fighter. I just remembered yesterday, I forgot to tell. Then for him, country came first, community came second, my village or my area came third, and us came fourth. And he was a community banker. He did homeopathy service. So for me, that was, and he gave us space to be ourselves. I didn't know what it was. We have two kids, and I find how difficult it is to give them the space. My wife gives the space, but when it is me, control versus empowerment. You know, that is what we grew up. I remember my wife was telling one point of time, if you don't give up the space, you lose them. And I'm a psychologist, I work with people. I didn't know how it is to let go. So I think all of you are saying how it is to enable, empower, and still take responsibility. That is one thing that came to my mind. I remember I did work in multiple corporates. I remember many of the bosses, they gave me the space. They allowed me to be myself. And I didn't know what freedom was. I worked with the Jesuit institution. The priest was director of XLRI, very elderly person. I was 27. He asked me to take sessions with leaders. So I didn't know, am I ready? But he trusted me. Now I come back, work with a large public sector, defense undertaking. My boss will give his car, go meet the leaders. Because I had a two-wheeler, I couldn't go, it will look bad. Then I worked with a multinational. In fact, I didn't join a multinational bank because I had to wear a tie and become a slave to XYZ, European company or European country. I said, I don't want to be their slave. Because that freedom was there in the mind. Lo and behold, I joined Alcan subsidiary. Every day as a manager, I had to wear ties. So then for me, the purpose was larger than wearing a tie. But when I was youngster, for me, tie meaning, do I want to be bonded to a country, to a certain set of people? So this has been my experiences. But what comes to us, I think I want to raise a question to all of you as I go ahead. I'm seeing now when I'm teaching youngsters, teaching mid-managers, teaching leaders, I'm seeing all these people are working today in 4 or 5 generations. I worked only with 2 generations, baby boomers and Gen X. Now, most of the youngsters, the Gen Y and Gen Z will work with themselves. The managers will be Gen Y, baby boomers and Gen X. And they'll come from different culture, like Chet, Uma, Sushma, me, we work with different cultures. So how do the complexity of enabling freedom, allowing freedom and being themselves, having happiness and making it happen? That is the paradox new age employees are going to face. So I want to raise it with that, starting, we'll reverse the order now. Uma, you may have to go now. So my question is, how do we build on each other, whatever you have said, enable freedom and also ensure that the organization, family or country's objectives are not hampered? So over to you, Uma. Sorry, Sushma, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we are dealing with many polarities here, and which does polarize us. So as I heard everybody, and to me, I think one of the paradoxes that we are dealing with, the very fact of saying that we empower people itself is a misnomer in that sense, because empowering self is the only answer. So I see the paradox here is freedom and responsibility on one side. And the other side is really about structure and control. Okay, because the structure and control is also needed at times. And what does it mean? So I throw open that as a paradox. And how do my panelists think about these freedom and sense of ownership on one side? And on the other side is the structure and control. Over to you, Chet.
Chet, I think Chet, now your turn. You know, you did talk about Afro-American context and 400 years of the challenges. So at one end, Uma talked about freedom and accountability. Other one is control and we'll say managing. Control is a way how to make the organizational purpose, country's purpose come through. So how do you respond to Sushma?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would put it this way. I think between freedom, personal freedom, and the system and the control is opportunity. That opportunity is that place that allows us to be able to create a world that certainly respects the infrastructure that exists, or even transform the infrastructure, but it needs the infrastructure there in order to be kind of a foundation for the next level of freedom. So there's an opportunity, because you can't just rest on your laurels from your personal freedom and say, hey, listen, I'm great and my life is well. I don't know about those other guys, but I'm good. And then, or be on the other side where it's completely about, okay, what does the system do? What does it say? Because all systems need to be reimagined at some point in time. That doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that they're good. It just means that there's a point in time where there's growth inside of a socioeconomic structure where the system needs to grow and become something else. So that middle ground of opportunity is the one where you have the personal freedom, but you also can rethink the infrastructure that gave you the freedom in the first place. That's opportunity, but we have to think about it from the perspective of opportunity. I'm interested to hear what Uma has to say about it.
Uma, before you go, I just want to remind you, yesterday, for the audience, Uma was an oil and gas explorer and then got into gold mining. And you did talk about how you explored your freedom. This is very important. And Chet, your point of how do we leverage the opportunity reminds me of, you remember the existentialism concept when the World War II happened. There's Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. He went through a lot of turmoil, but he chose to leverage the opportunity. Uma, I would like you to rewind yesterday and what you told about how you grew up and leveraged freedom as well as control.
Definitely. I think that's a great point, both Sushma, Chet, and yourself as a moderator bringing up is that's the structure, that's the opportunity. In between, we as individuals create our own illusion and vision and mission and all the stuff and trap ourselves. And the one thing that I did was, while I was growing up, I'm successful now, I can say that. But I grew up in a very dead poor family. I mean, really, we didn't have milk. We had 3 kids and all that. So today, I live in US. My parents are doing very well. My big brother's, he lives in Australia and we're all over the place. But what we did was claim our independence. We have the independence to volunteer for something. If there's an opportunity, volunteer for it. You don't have to sit there and say, I need the freedom for everything to come to me. right? So I volunteered. I was 16 years old when I was going offshore and working part-time on oil rigs. I was 18 years old when I was working in oil and gas platforms. I was 20 years old when I was doing, 18 years old when I was doing internship, and 20 years old and 21 years old, they gave me a managing director role in Indonesia. I was a tiny Asian girl in the middle of Indonesia on oil rigs, telling big white men to do this and do that. And that's because they didn't see my color, they didn't see my size. They knew what I was capable of because I volunteered and I say I can do it. Soon they didn't see my face, they didn't put restrictions on me and say this girl is too tiny, she won't be safe, we have to give her and all this. They didn't worry at all. They knew what I was capable of. Claim your independence, claim your opportunity. Don't look at the constraints as constraints. If there is a constraint, how can you make it work for you, right? I didn't even know I was poor, frankly, when I was, because my parents always made us feel rich. The society, the community, the village that brought us up, because my parents both were working, we were latchkey kids. So what happened was the villagers took care of us at that time. So we never felt like we didn't have a society taking, we always felt rich. There's so many people around us. So I think true freedom is when you know you have a good support network, you have good relationships, you have great friendships, and you have passion for the work you do, and you fall in love with the work that you do. It's not always going to be fun, beds of roses and everything. So that's why you have an opportunity, you have a job to do, and then you have a structure within to do it. Claim your independence throughout every one of them.
Thanks, Uma. I just am reminded of a very excellent theory, which is a 2x2 metric. It says, on one axis is freedom, other axis is your values and purpose. So that is the organization value. You can do it at individual level. You can do it also on organization level. So I saw the Uma getting freedom, but also aligning with the petroleum company. They won't have made a wrong choice. They saw you align with your values, aligning to the company values and company purpose, and hence the MD at a young age. Thank you very much. I just thought, unless somebody has a comment, I want to keep it open for question answers. We had agreed to give open. We have given our perspective. It's time for audience to keep questions. Please raise questions and be succinct in your questions, and I'll you can direct to the speaker or to me. Be very succinct. Over to you all. Vivek, all are open, no? They can unmute themselves.
Yes, that option is given. Or if there is any issue one can ask. Raise his hand or other.
Akanksha, Nilendra, Swaradeep, Suresh, any one of you. Shraddha, Bala, any one of you. Santosh, Manoranjan Babu.
While they are gathering themselves in order to ask the question, I want to just to follow up on something that Uma said, and I think it's important. She was speaking of the whole aspect of how falling in love with your job is a level of freedom, truly. But one of the and being able to do that which you seek to do in life, there is a freedom there because you're no longer tethered to some of the other constraints. But let me offer this one other too, and maybe someone can comment on that. I found a deeper sense of freedom when I became spiritually grounded. I now had a kind of a personal infrastructure. We were talking about the systems and the freedom over here. These things are outside, but I found a personal kind of freedom when I knew what I would put up with, what was valuable to me, what were the things that I look for in other people. And just knowing that, having that framework allowed me to decide when I walk through the earth, do I want to go here? Do I want to be there? Do I want to do this? Can I put up with that? That level of freedom, it was everything because it clarified how I walked through the earth. So I highly, just the whole aspect of spiritual grounding did that for me.
Thank you. Chet, yeah, Susma has a comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to make one point after listening to Uma and Chet. I think very early on in my life, I realized that if I want to be really free, I have to be financially independent. I cannot be dependent on anyone, even at a very early age. And so to me, that was something that really guided me. And today, many of my friends ask me that, how do you give yourself so much freedom? I mean, we still can't take that much of freedom. You know, I have to tell my wife, I cannot just go out and all that kind of stuff that holds us back. And I just laugh. I said, I don't understand why you're so shackled. So to me, this whole sense of being on your own, and therefore the kind of trust that you build with others as well as yourself, that's very fundamental to embrace freedom in the real sense of the word. So I thought I'll just add that piece.
And before we go on, I just want to link up, since Chet, both of you are bringing to self and within. Chet, just for information, I read Gandhiji's Gita. Gita is a miniature of Mahabharata, one of the epics. Gandhi, the freedom fighter of country, who is father of the nation, what you said when you got spirituality, Gandhi said, whenever I had a dilemma, whether I'm in the right path, am I doing this thing? Whenever he got confused, he went back to Gita. Not that, some spiritual insight. Am I in the right path? Am I doing the right thing? What Sushma talked, unless I'm financially independent, I can't be mentally independent, I can't be psychological independent. So spirituality, dependence, independence, and freedom seem to be appearing there. Now over to audience, please. Let's quickly listen to Shankar sir, anybody? Santosh, Ram. You have any comments? If not questions, some comments, clarification. Are we making sense? Are we talking in the air, the panel? Ramlingam sir.
I think that the paradox that you talked about, Professor Mahapatra, that is very, very important, because that is one piece of knowledge and one piece of insight, and striking the balance that is becoming very contentious and very confusing, especially for, you know, a generation who has not experienced, not had first-hand experiences of living in very complex society, you know. So I think that is a very, very important question this panel raises. Also, you know, when Uma was talking about free will and freedom, and Sushma and Chet, and I mean, the whole focus, one thing that was really intriguing, and that becomes a problem with conflict with personal freedom, is that how do we define freedom? Freedom for one becomes a freedom for a restriction and oppression, a point of oppression. So how do you deal with those situations that are conflicting? You know, the issues of class, the issue of caste, the issue of power politics that are embedded in, you know, and who has the power? I mean, when we talk about we are giving you freedom, that in itself is, you know, a power structure.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to, your panel really opened up a lot of questions in that direction for me.
Sorry,
So
I'll just do one thing. I'll pass it on to Chet. Susma already had a view, you know, she said, who empowers you already? Sorry, Chet to you, and if necessary, Uma and Susma in that order. Chet, you want to respond? See from Afro perspective, and then American perspective, and then global perspective.
Sure.
Please, pass on to Uma. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that really is interesting here, especially at this time in the United States as an African American, is that we are now realizing that freedom is an opportunity. It is and in many ways it is an edict, because when you have rapidly changing environments, freedom is more than just I can do what I want, but now it's not just a responsibility, but it's also about your ability to imagine something else. Anytime there is crisis, freedom is tested, and not just on a political level, but your personal freedom, because the society is in flux. We are in that particular place right now, so we are being asked to really drill down on what it means to be free. And we haven't had to do that before. And I can say this, that from an I use that from an African-American perspective, but it's a unique perspective because our experience is unique in the States. But we've always kind of held freedom close and tightly, and it's been something sacred. The rest of society, not as much, because it was always assumed. So now we're living in a day of COVID, financial crisis, social upheaval. Now that whole aspect of, well, what does it mean to be free? Now it's front and center. So it's asking us to be more clear as to what it means to be free, and how can we make it so that it can be shared by our neighbors, our friends, our pals, our family. So we are going through the test of really rethinking the importance of freedom and what is freedom. I think sometimes we're answering a lot of those questions, but I think it's pressed under change, under rapid and dramatic change, and you'll be hearing us seeking to find that out, because there's going to have to be some level of collective agreement about what freedom is.
Thanks, Chet. My son is in California, and he's experiencing this both as an observer and recipient. I can relate to that. Every talk is there. Uma, over to you. Would like to relate and your perspective from an Asian global perspective. How does it look? And then back to Sushma again, unless there is another question in between. Yeah, let's make it brief. And Uma,
yeah. So for me, I think as we
Sushma would allow Uma to go ahead. Yeah, Uma.
Can you hear me?
Let Sushma go ahead. No problem.
Okay, Sushma, go ahead.
Yeah.
See?
Okay. So
Respect.
I was saying that we have a collective oppressive cultures. And it is so interesting that, how our being is constantly oppressing other people. And so therefore, when we got freedom from Britishers, we thought that's freedom. Okay. And now we are really dealing with all kinds of issues, as Sanchit says, about class, caste, religion, and that sense of freedom. And we don't know anything anymore. And unless we really don't explore together and create those kinds of forums, and Chet talks about reimagining, to creating new dream, where people are really free, which is what Rabindranath Tagore talked about, that I want to wake up in my, in a place where there is no fear. And that was his dream about 50 years ago. And I don't think we have moved much beyond wherever we were. So Sanchit, I think this is really whole lot of questions, yes. And many times inquiry is the answer.
Thank you. Thanks, Sushma. And Uma, before you go ahead, I think reimagining just kinds, and I'll pass it on. I did a lot of work with companies on reimagining themselves. Chet, on visioning, when I used to upfront the experience, the question of the values the companies held on. The question was, you can recreate the vision, but without clarifying the values, you are not the same person, you are not the same stakeholders. So Chet, I just caught on that. So Sushma, thank you. Bring back to self. Have I experienced the freedom? Is my mind free? Can I go ahead freely? Uma, over to you. Now respond. Asian, American, and global.
Asian, American, confused person. Listen, we don't get to choose the most important date in our lives, which is when we are born.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We don't have the freedom to choose being born. So what the heck are we here sitting here arguing over freedom and all that, right? So at the base level, as a human being, coming from Singapore, the history of Singapore is, and Sushma hit this point, is my forefathers, right, great-great-grandparents were plucked from India, from the southern part of India, thrown on a boat, 100 people, don't even know where they're going. They were shoved to Singapore and Malaysia to populate coolies, merchants, and all those kind of people. We didn't have the freedom then, right? I have the freedom now for what they sacrificed. I am grateful for that. So for me, freedom is being grateful and giving back to my ancestors. I'm very rooted in my culture. This is the problem with America. And we've talked about that with Chet, is what is your roots? Do Americans know where they come from? I know my culture. I do Bharatanatyam. I grew up on all the cultural stuff because our Indian culture kept it, even though we were far away from homeland, it kept it. So that's why I see there's a difference when there's a fight for personal freedom versus freedom of rights and all of that stuff. The clash has to go back to some sort of roots of culture and history.
Thank you. Thank you. I teach a course called Managing Career Self and Career Success. And I use the word lineage. The word in Sanskrit is sanskar, lineage or sanskar. Where do you come from? What is your gifts in the family in India? Thank you. Let's go on to the next question. One or two more questions from audience, please. I know we are managing time well. Thanks to my panelists. They have done extremely well. Ramling, sir, anybody? Saradip, Dhal Babu, Manoranjan Babu, tomorrow when you are moderating, you won't have this freedom. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
See, freedom is not given. Unless I take the risk and willing to lose, I can never get into freedom. As Sushma was saying, unless I free myself from dependence, I cannot enjoy or exercise freedom for a meaningful purpose. This is something that came to my mind.
Thank you.
And more it is inner related. And we think that the environment will continue to be what it is. People have found opportunities and exercised their own freedom and power. And Zoom has become more profitable now. Because the environment has been taken to their advantage. That freedom is always available. And whether I have to take that decision, for that, whatever it may be, overcoming challenges is the first thing. And that can happen only when I give freedom to myself. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I just noticed Tasneem, if you're active, I think, can we get your perspective? Tasneem, I don't know, unless you are busy something else, listening to us. Any perspective?
I have
yeah, go ahead.
He wants to speak.
Yeah, can you please unmute yourself? Whosoever is speaking.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I feel no freedom is absolute. Freedom comes with lots of responsibility. So that's what Uma was also pointing out in the very beginning. I see also there is lots of issues, and rather I will say it is abuse of freedom, particularly when we see in the name of freedom, say what is happening in the social media. So we don't respect others. So people, I feel that we are not being sensitive towards the other person, be it a case being the trial happening in the social media, be it even so, because law cannot define.
You are not audible.
I'm not audible.
Yeah, now please.
Now it's okay. Yeah.
Yes, now it is
okay. Okay, let me perhaps increase my volume. Yeah.
You have to come to the closer. Yeah.
So my question to either of the panel, anyone can answer in the so how do you sensitize people to understand the freedom? Because I know in the so only few people are very sensitive and they take care of the others. But how do you sensitize people?
Yeah.
And take care of the
Sorry, sensitive to time. Vivek, can I have 2 minutes extra? I'll request first Chet, you respond, and Sushma, between Sushma and Uma, you respond, and we'll close. Yeah, Chet, how do you respond directly to Manoranjan's question? Yeah.
I think that what happens is that you have to develop a culture of freedom-loving people. I think that freedom is being held kind of tightly by a few people and not being provided as a cultural edict for all. So you have to develop a culture of freedom-loving people.
Yeah, Sushma, over to you, and let's hand it over to.
Yeah, so to me, culture as well as our parenting has to really emphasize the whole freedom of choice, because the same parents who say that, you know, we want you to stand up on your feet, we want you to be free and all that nonsense that they talk about, and then the child falls in love and says, I want to marry this girl. And they say, How can you betray us? This is not what we brought you up for.
Thank you. Yeah, Uma, you want to close with one more line?
Sir, Gopal sir.
How can I add to that line?
One line and we'll close. Yeah.
Gopal sir.
Yeah.
I think both of them hit it on the nail. It is a culture and it's also parenting. I cannot be who I am if my parents didn't say, and my brothers actually pushed me to say I can be whoever I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's from that. And then my culture in Singapore was like equal education, equal opportunity, full stop.
Thanks. I think we'll hand it over. I know there'll be questions. So, Sureshji, please hold on. So what I'll do is I want to thank all of you. Let me summarize. I think in a nutshell, all the four panelists are saying freedom is inherited. Freedom is your individual choice, but it's not free will, just to be let free. It is you have to, with the values and lineage, you come with the family. Uma, Chet, Susma, me, all of us said how we grew up. Though we got, how do we exercise our freedom with a free will, not abdicate our responsibility and own ourselves. I think there is a consensus, and I think freedom has to be leveraged, like all of us are told, and also we have to create a culture and go ahead with that. With those words, thank you, Vivek, and I want to thank all my panelists and audience for whatever we did. And in the interest of time, thanking you all and move on to the next session. Thanks, Vivek. Yeah, Susma has any...
I just want to read few lines of Rabindranath Tagore.
Yeah.
As a closure.
That's a very good ending. Yes. Thank you.
Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, Susma. It's a great pleasure, and we had a great Independence Day beginning. Thank you. Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Gopal Mahapatra. It was wonderful to see that. First thing is we are on time exactly, so that is good part to see in these kind of programs or where we are on time. That is the thanks for that. And the second is we are able to capture the different perspective in the first session, and it will help the next session to continue the momentum which we will take up to the next level of discussion around how we see the freedom from general perspective, from a day-to-day perspective, and then we'll go to the next level from the gender diversity, and then we will see freedom from those two aspects. So thank you, Chet, thank you, Uma, thank you, Sushma, and it was wonderful to listen all of you. And I was expecting that it would have been 8 hours. It was so nice to listen all of you. So hope for next time. So thanks. Over to Swati for our next session.
Thank you, Vivek. And that was really a very thought-provoking discussion that we just had. It started really well. And I just hope that we are able to make space for ourselves and for the others to just be. Thank you all once again for giving us such nice thoughts and views on freedom. And we move on to the next section, which is on gender, identity, and freedom. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all our panelists. To start with, we have, can all the panelists be on the video, please? Can I please request all of you to be on video? Thank you. So we have with us Jinat Tasneem from USA. She's a 1.5 generation Bangladeshi American queer Muslim millennial. She grew up in Texas, but has found a home in Minnesota for the last 8 years, where she has lived in and fostered many intentional communities communities, worked in human rights and youth organization, and is involved in grassroots Asian American community. Currently, she's working on shaping trauma-informed spaces for girls of color in Minnesota to process the effects of the uprising following the murder of George Floyd, and a virtual healing series by and for Asian Americans coping during COVID-19. Very warm welcome, Junaid. We also have with us Mehru Jafar from India. She's an author and a journalist who was born and brought up in Lucknow. And for the last 30 years, Mehru has lived in Europe before returning to make home all over again in Lucknow in 2012. Mehru has reported for the BBC Hindi service and for a wide range of Indian media from different parts of the world, including Jakarta, Indonesia. Mehru created a 50-minute documentary on the European fans of Bollywood heartthrob Shah Rukh Khan, and Let's Talk Lucknow. Again, a series of 5 minutes video on YouTube. The video introduces different aspects of Lucknow that make the city so unique. Welcome, Mehru.
Thank you.
We have with us R. Shankar Subramanian. He has 35 years of professional experience in human resource, consulting OD and applied behavioral science. After working for 18 years in human resources in India's top corporate companies, Shankar embarked on his career as a consultant. Shankar has worked in large Indian multinational organizations across India and Barbados. Shankar has consulted with organizations all over the world in more than 52 countries. Currently, Shankar is serving at as the International Director of the Board of NTL Institute for Applied Behavioral Science, USA, and the Director of ChangeWorks, a boutique consulting organization based out of Mumbai. Welcome, Shankar.
Thanks, Swati. Thanks.
Yeah. And we have Manoranjan, who is also moderating this session for us. He has a PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, specializes in trade union and labor management relations. Currently, he's working as an associate professor at the Indian Institute of Management. He has conducted research on labor management relationship in Japanese automobile sector by Japan Institute of Labor Policy and Training in 2015. Dr. Thal teaches courses on human resource management, industrial relation, labor law, hiring compensation, and rewards management, and strategic international human resource management. Welcome, Professor Thal. And over to you, Professor Thal.
Thank you. Thanks, Swati. So first of all, at the outset, a happy Independence Day to all of you, and warm welcome to this discussion. I am privileged.
Manoranjan, may I request you? Your voice is not audible. Can you please be lean forward or make like this? Yeah, please. Thanks.
Is it better?
Yes, very much better. Very much better.
Yeah. Okay. I think I should sit a little closer. So I'm privileged to have the honor of moderating this session, and I have the panel members, those who are experienced enough to drive the discussion. I am going to enjoy the session by listening to them more. And welcome Shankar, Junaid, Mehru, and all the august audience. Swati has already given the introduction, so I don't have the border to do that. Now, I would just like to introduce the topic to the audience, and along with that, so we'll try to keep it as a free-flow discussion. The number of audiences is less, so we can have more interaction. That gives the advantage. So the title given to us is Gender Identity and Freedom. So this is a very, very interesting topic. Swati has already introduced me. One thing I just wanted to add to the introduction is that some of the common thread where some of us are here is one organization called ISAPS, Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences, and thanks to some of my mentors who are here, Ram and Shankar. I would like to thank them. This is one opportunity. This is one space where I started a different journey in 2007 when I got associated with ISAS. And this is the space of human process laboratory, which helped me in experiencing my gender. Earlier, it was all either because yes, it was all biological. So I'm getting a different perspective because I'm getting into the masculine and feminine experiences of every gender. It is not that okay, so it is only the biological gender which matters. It is how do you experience being a male? How do you experience your femininity? Or being a female? How do you experience your masculinity? And how does it impact your journey, your individuality at work, in your personal life, and how does it impact your freedom? So that's a very interesting journey. And particularly after this experience in the lab, I could also identify and without any kind of I don't have, I'm not sighing out in admitting that fact that I do have quite a lot of feminine characteristics, the so-called what people talk about. And I have found that is very comfortable to take care of people. That's why I feel privileged that so I had a career in HR. So from that perspective, when I look at it was by activating those characteristics, it helps in taking care of the kids at home. It helps in taking care of the people in the workplace. And I like those aspects. But the other side of the story is that that has, so it's not that I am not much aggressive, but the thing is that this not being aggressive is kind of also being treated as that you are more like a feminine character. So I found that with some of my male colleagues, those who are usually aggressive, they find that so come on. When I start becoming assertive, they say, oh, okay, so here is a person all of a sudden becoming assertive, demanding for his need. That was something which was a very difficult thing to experience, and I can now at least so with my experiences that I can activate either comfortably. So that's what is helping me, and I am quite happy about all those experiences which I am going through. But yes, it is if I link it to freedom, what I mean by freedom is what you think, what you feel, and what you express. Is all these three are in congruence with each other, then I feel that I am at ease, I am in freedom. So from that perspective, I always find that it is a struggle to continue to do so. So be it depending upon your gender, be it upon your role identity, because many a time your role also comes into place. So I don't want to take more time. Let me open it to the panel. So I would like to go to. I would like to go to Meru first. I think Meru, particularly, I would like to listen from you. Being a female with roles like journalist, activist, writer, how do you experience the freedom, or how have you experienced your freedom? And if you can also add that what has helped or hindered your journey so far.
Thank you, Manoranjan. Happy to know that you're searching for both your feminine and your masculine strength within yourself. I kind of do the same. So if being empowered to buy my own home bread and butter every day is having aroused the masculine side of myself, then indeed I have succeeded in doing that, because I'm not dependent on any male member of my family to feed me or to clothe me or to house me. So in that sense, I like what you said, but let me first of all say a very happy Independence Day to all of you. In Lucknow, we say Mubarak ho, Mubarak ho. I am at the moment living in Lucknow, which is the capital city of Uttar Pradesh, the largest populated state in the country of nearly 30 lakh people. So as I said before, in my personal space, in my personal journey, I feel most liberated and very free. But when I look around me at the plight of the majority of the people I live with, I feel despondent and concerned about, what freedom means to them and to us. I cannot, sometimes it prevents me, the general state of affairs, it prevents me from enjoying my own personal freedom. So I'll just give you a 1 minute background of where I come from. Growing up in one of the most fertile spaces along the very rich Indo-Gangetic plains in the 1960s, one's elders always told us that with a constitution like ours, we can only go ahead, we can only progress. But 73 years later, I feel we have receded, parts of our life has receded backwards into the Middle Ages. When I'm referring to incidents like mob lynchings and wanting to kill people in public places, so on and so forth. Now, who would have thought that 73 years later, I would be wondering where we are headed in the future? Insecurities on various fronts make us a little less courageous to face death, disease, and natural disasters staring us in the face today. Once this province of Uttar Pradesh was one of the wealthiest in South Asia. Although majority of the population has always missed out on a more dignified life for eons. The handful of people in power throughout the monarchy to this day, democratic days have always had it good, but not the majority. Here, by the majority population, I don't mean a religious majority, but the part of the population that remains without job, food, and home, even 73 years after independence. That is a matter of great concern. So the joy is over personal freedom, but the sorrow is that the majority of people are still imprisoned in far less freedom than what I enjoy. The majority population of the country is still marginalized and deprived, and the situation of women within this majority community of poor is the worst. Under these circumstances, it seems we do have freedom in words, but not in spirit. So we are still waiting to convert political freedom also in cultural, social, and economic freedom. We are free, but often it feels like we are not free. Then there are two incidents which I wanted to quote here, but maybe I'll mention them later, that come and prick at your personal freedom and make you less happy because of what is happening around you in society. Yes, we have political independence and freedom, but await cultural and social freedom. Ever since people in my part of the world lost interest in agricultural activities to cash in only on industry, the state of Uttar Pradesh is reduced to one of the most backward provinces in post-colonial times. So this is a little bit of a hint if you want to know why once upon a time, 200-300 years ago, an area that was so wealthy has become one of the most backward areas in the country today. So it's because the agricultural activities have been neglected,
Meru,
and
just
it was the
sorry
sorry.
to remind you a little bit about the time so that we
Okay,
can.
very quickly, very
Yeah,
quickly.
sorry.
No
Yeah,
problem.
so
No, I
I'm very
need
much
to
there
do
with
that
you.
because I love to talk so much I can go on. So I thank you very much. The city was once a hub of revolutionary politics, a place of several educational institutions of repute, of high culture and beautiful buildings. But pieces of that civilized slice of life from former times still remain, inspiring Urdu poets to engage even today with society in words that are drawn from the bottom of their poetic heart. Since our history, law and order situation, plight of the economy, and all other statistics about Uttar Pradesh are easily available, especially online, I come here with no fat files to quote from about the state of affairs around us, except 2 lines from a female Urdu poet. I find Anjum Rehbar's poetry resonating with ordinary citizens, and here she is kind of wrapping up what many of us feel about freedom today. जीना है दुश्वार यहाँ पर, जीना है दुश्वार यहाँ पर, मरना है आसान, ये है हिंदुस्तान हमारा, प्यारा Hindustan. So I think I'll end here without bothering to translate this into English.
Thank you, Meru. Thanks for
Welcome.
those beautiful lines. It is again, it is nice to see that. So you yourself feel that so you are enjoying your personal freedom, but you have it is also simultaneously a concern to see that the how the society is experiencing the freedom. So let's see together how we can build it a better society.
Exactly.
So I will quickly move to Sankar. And I would request Sankar a little bit to add on these, particularly the role identity aspect. So being a consultant, being a trainer, particularly as a human process facilitator, Sankar, how have you experienced gender-based role identity is impacting the freedom?
Thanks, Manoranjan, and happy Independence Day to all of you. You know, Manoranjan, you started with a very intra-psychic level of looking at your masculinity and femininity, and Meheru has taken it to a societal, larger, systemic kind of a level in terms of economic, social injustices that is happening. So I will try and see whether I can come in between the two of you in terms of the so the world between the intra psychic and the world which is at the very large systemic level. And I think it is also a reflection of the fact that the freedom has all these levels. I mean, we are talking about intra-psychic and interpersonal and group and at society level and things like that. So freedom has at all these levels. Now, social identity as a phenomena. So I'm going to be a little theoretical here, so that I think maybe it is important to understand this concept. There is something called personal identity and there is something called social identity. I think we need to understand that that is different. We in India as a culture, and I know, for example, in my own life, if you had met me 50 years ago as a youngster, about 10 years old, 15 years old, and asked for who I am, I would have described most of the things from my social identity. I would have said I'm a man. I would have said I'm a Brahmin. I'm from so and so, and I would have given all indicators of my social identity because the personal identity was subsumed under the social identity. And my theory is that many of us in India still don't have their personal identity. We only have our social identity. Even when two people meet in this country, we first ask, where are you from? Which gaon, kaun sa gaon se hai? What is your jaat kya hai? Tumhara caste, what is your caste? What is your this? So it is more about knowing the social identity, and your privilege and your rank is based on your social identity. And of course, I grew up without knowing all these things, because I was on top of the chain. I was a man and I was a Brahmin, born in a Brahmin family, which was known in the society in that particular area of mine. So to me, I was on top of the food chain, and I did not really see um, anything wrong with the way I was actually. But even the way I was taking in those social identity had an impact on the way in which not only I perceived myself, but also the world to perceive about me. Of course, today, if you ask me who I am and I have to write down a list of things, very rarely will many of my social identities will come in, because I have discovered much more aspects of myself. And we talk about masculinity, femininity from a biological perspective. Yes, I can say I'm a man as from a biological perspective, but then from a different perspective, you can talk about, like you talked about, the Ardhanarishwar and all that. Anyway, so now the issue here is we need to look at is that in my experience in our country, the social identity is given much more importance. And today, maybe a few years ago, or when we were independent, it was more about the social identity in terms of your caste and class, which still matters, and your gender and your age. Today, it is also now one more thing has got added to it, which is economic. So if you are rich, you are an Ambani, you can get away with anything that you want to do. So economic level is also another important social identity that has started to influence how you are being looked at as a person. And women and men. Now, one of the important differences between men and women in the way they have to struggle for social identity is that for men it is a cakewalk, because it is just kind of your red carpet is rolled for you, so to speak. Because you have to then compete only on your intelligence or your, many other factors. But for a woman, the very fact that they are a woman, you start with a disadvantage. And I don't think our society, at least I can say about India very clearly, except for small pockets here and there, but I think very largely ours is a highly patriarchal society, a very highly male dominated society. And I think the men are not ready to share the equality space with women. And it is almost like women have to fight for it. I mean, recently a friend of mine I think she just advertised a women's leadership program, and the picture that she put in the brochure is of this Wonder Woman, that one of the superwoman characters. So I wrote to her saying, why does women have to be a superwoman to be a leader? I mean, it's almost as if that women have to be superwoman to be leaders. Men can be leaders just because you are a man. I mean, this is and this is propagated by a woman. So you can see how the stereotypes are being propagated in our society. And to me, the answer to this lies when we are, I think in the last panel also somebody talked about, that we shift our focus from social identity to psychological identity. And I think that's where being more inward looking, and you talked about ISABs and the kind of work, spirituality and many other kind of work, when we are able to look more inwards into us and claim some of the identities of who we really are as a person, and then we can discard some of the social identities, because at the fundamental level we are all one, and there is no distinction between a man and a woman, and because all of that is contained in us, and that's what the whole masculinity femininity theory talks about. So everything is contained in you. So there is no differentiation at that level. It's like somebody asked Ramana Maharshi once, saying that, how do I, create comfort for other people, and how do I build, diversity sensitivity with other people? And Ramana Maharshi asked the question, where are the others? So there are no other, because it is you. So that's a very idealistic and an ultimate sense of looking at it. But what I'm saying is that we as a society needs to remove the attributions of person's identity from a social perspective, and especially so with respect to gender, if we have to grow and become a more free country. And I think that's something that I believe. And when I look at myself, I think that has been my shift in my life as a person, to being able to be more effective and to be more able to accept the women and the men, and and not just that, sexuality and different other dimensions of my social identity. That has been possible only when I have shifted that frame and removed those attributions. And I think that's the learning that I would present to the world. Thank you for giving me this time, Manoranjan. I don't know whether how much time I took. I'm sorry if I extended my time. So,
Thanks for giving us such a beautiful perspective of social identity versus psychological identity. Definitely, this will add value. So I would like to quickly move to Gina. So you are associated with several aspects, starting from human rights to community development, and you are working in a multicultural environment. Jinat, how do you experience your identity as a woman while exercising your freedom?
Thank you for the question, and happy Independence Day, everyone. Excuse me if you saw me yawning earlier. It is 2 a.m. here in Minnesota, where I'm at, but it's an honor to be a part of this. Yeah, I think I was really drawn to this topic, and especially when I heard, and then more so when I heard kind of who the audience would be, and so many thoughts are swirling in my head, just listening, all the thoughts that I'm carrying over from the panel that just happened before us with Chet and Shushma and Uma. So all of that's like swirling together, and what's becoming really clear right now is just how much people might not have access to stories like mine, that of a 1.5 generation immigrant. And by 1.5, I am first generation because I was born in Bangladesh, but I did come here as a young child, and so all my schooling has been in the US, and in that way it's very split between worlds. And my parents and I, we immigrated to the US in the early 90s, and because of that, they also like kept their values from the early 90s. And that is something I have noticed when I go in between continents and come back to South Asia to visit, is just how much my upbringing and the values and the cultural values in my home, and in the community, in the Bangladeshi and even the Indian, just the broader like Desi community in Texas. I grew up in this very, very diverse community outside the DFW airport. So immigrants from all over the world landed there for jobs. So my high school was super, super diverse. All my friends are also like first through fourth generation immigrants. And what I'm thinking about during this freedom panel is just, how much like India and broader South Asia is changing, right? Like that seems to be a theme, and how much it's not changing, that's also a theme. And yeah, that back and forth conversation with my own life and my own identity and relationship to freedom is all the things that I think might be surprising for people still on the subcontinent to hear about how limited it has been because of those things. In the last panel, Uma talked about being really connected to her culture, and one of the ways in which I think my community and my family, one of the ways that we stayed connected to our culture, unfortunately, included kind of the more restrictive aspects of our culture. So when I'll admit that I don't think about freedom is a giant concept all the time, but the first thing that struck me when I was reading about this summit going on was about how much like freedom was a bad word kind of in my household, and sort of again that subset Desi culture around me. I remember consuming like Indian media, like Bollywood and stuff like that, that would portray really insolent youngsters basically trying to rebelling and fighting for their freedom and fighting against their parents, and that being all seen as just quotes about like, it's my life, being portrayed as very naive and as very disrespectful. And those were kind of the boxes I was put in my whole life, and kind of knowing those both the said and unsaid rules about what I was allowed to say or not say. And it has all those intersections with my identity, right? With being Muslim and what the expectations kind of are there, and what parts are culture and what parts are religion are hard to discern. And through my own spiritual journey, I've been able to distinguish them in ways that I think my elders haven't always, because my spiritual upbringing was in the US, and mosques where I grew up were very multicultural. Muslims from India, from South Asia, but also Muslims from Arab countries, Muslims from Indonesia, Muslims from Africa, all went to the same mosque because there would be only one in like a 10-20 mile radius around here. And so I grew up in a very globalized Muslim culture. So when I got home and my parents or over the phone, my grandmother or whatever would try to impose things that they said were like part of Islam, I could debate it back because I knew the Quran really fresh as a child, and could fight against, gender roles and things like that. And the parts, that have always resonated the most for me about Islam, that have tied me to my religion the most, were the most feminist aspects of Islam. That the Prophet's first wife was 40 years old and was a businesswoman and proposed to him, and reminding folks about those sort of roots of no, our culture doesn't, it is about equality. So a lot of those struggles I have had to live sort of embodied in my life kind of come to mind, to bring it kind of full circle to thinking about my work in the community aspect as well, is bringing that personal to the broader struggle, right? And like I said, I don't always think about freedom so much on broad terms. I do think about it in personal struggle terms, but in broad terms, a word that I do spend a lot of time in the work world, in my activism world, is liberation. So I'm also been thinking a lot about that relationship too, between freedom and liberation, and what the difference might be, because collective liberation seems to be such a key principle of what we're fighting for right now in different movements, different intersecting movements. I'm involved in a lot of Asian American organizing, and right now, as Asian Americans are trying to find our place in the movement for Black lives, how to show up in solidarity for Black lives, a key part of that is recognizing our investment in shared liberation, right? And that is our investment in shared freedom, so that everybody can breathe freely, and kind of seeing that reflected back in us too, right? That, in the US, we have such fraught racial tensions, but and sometimes it looks very black and white, but actually it impacts all of us, because the day that a Black man can walk the streets freely, can feel safe and breathe freely, will be the day that we can all also experience that. So in those ways, kind of placing myself in that bigger picture and then remembering my own struggles and placing myself in that bigger movement is kind of how I make sense of the world and how I move through it.
Jana, thank you. Thank you for bringing in a completely different perspective and how are you experiencing your freedom, particularly in a cultural perspective. See, the title of the session was given about gender, role identity, and the freedom. When I look at all this, see, we talk more about the diversity means only male and female. We talk about gender means only this aspect. And I'm a person, when I look at this fact of gender diversity, inclusion, exclusion, all those aspects, I'm a person who hates that terminology called women empowerment. Because I personally believe that so women empowerment means you are first perceiving that they are not powerful, so that's why you need to empower them so that they can come up or match. Okay, so can we, instead of male, female, so can we start treating people with humanity? So each one as an equal individual. So then the gender doesn't, I need not to wear that lens of gender at all. So that solves my problem. Even in the previous panel, as well as Meru was also pointing out, it is also lots of things to do with your upbringing process. So that's how the freedom comes. I was just going through one figure is that, okay, so in India, only 9.5% female own the property. Out of 130 billion people, only 9.5%. This is such a minimal figure. So that's why Shankar was pointing out that, okay, so you start the game where the playing field is disadvantageous. So can we start changing the game rule of the game? So I would go back to the panel, and this time I would request you to be very brief, 2 to 3 minutes, so that we can open up a little bit for the question and answer session. So I would change the sequence, and I would like to start with Shankar. You being a person who has spent many years in corporate, also as an active role, now also as a consultant. So how do you think that gender and identity is playing a role in experiencing freedom, particularly in the context of industry?
Yeah. So this is, you are changing the question to now looking at women in the corporate world. Is that what you are asking?
Not only women.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how gender plays out in the corporate world, playing out. Yeah. I think I mean, the corporate world is nothing but a reflection of our society, and like you said, about 9.3% whatever women own property in the country. The number of women who work in organizations in India in organized sector also will be around that percentage, and number of women who are in leadership positions in organizations will be much less than that, and number of women who are CEOs of organizations will be like maybe 1%. So the issue is that, as you said, one has been the playing field is not level. That itself is one of the issues that has happened. Even though, see, there are 2-3 dimensions to this issue. It's not as simplistic as sometimes we portray it to be. I mean, at a cognitive level, all of us understand that your intelligence is not based on your sex. Whether you are a woman or a man, your intelligence is not based on that. Your capabilities in terms of maybe physical, there are some differences, but most of your capabilities, there are no differences. But there are 2 other dimensions which create this problem. One is the aspect of fear. Men are afraid of giving up their power. Okay, so there is a psychological fear. I mean, and it is it's very unconscious. So people don't realize it. Even I sometimes catch myself do that because I know that there is an unconscious fear of giving up my control. And so one of the issues about freedom at a larger context is that it is almost like freedom and control, like somebody talked about Singapore as an example. So it's almost like I give you freedom, I control freedom for you. I mean, that's not really freedom at all. So freedom is not something that is given or taken. Freedom is something that exists. So here, that's one problem that happens because of fear. The second thing that also is happening is that the gender roles that has been created by especially in our country, and even women are not willing to get out of their gender roles. To give you an example, somebody recently just wrote a post in one of the LinkedIn's or Facebook or something, saying that how he was talking about how his wife was basically doing the work and all that during the COVID times, and also taking care of, bartans and jadu and, all the housework and all that, and how he is helping her and, stuff like that. Almost as if he was doing her a favor. In supporting his wife for doing that. So in his mind, these are women's roles. The taking care of the house, cooking food, washing clothes, taking care of, it's a woman's role. Who said that? This is our social construction, unfortunately, right? And women also stick to that roles because they also feel miserable if they come back home and then don't cook the food for their husband or children. They also feel very miserable that they are not living up to their role. So it's on both sides. So somehow we have stereotyped roles and attributed roles to gender, and it is not just, as you rightly said, it's not just a men, woman, gender kind of thing, but many other social dimensions. But since we are talking about gender specifically, and these stereotypes have got stuck to us, and we grow up owning that stereotype, and we are not willing to let go. So I may be a very successful woman, corporate world or wherever, being a CEO of a company, whatever. Even you heard the other day, Kamala Harris, who now been nominated as vice president, whatever, she's saying in the meeting, in a public this thing, saying I may become vice president, but being mom is my biggest role that I'll play. While it may be political and, she wants to say the right things, whatever, but why you identify yourself so strongly with the stereotypical roles as a woman or as a man? And that is the issue that we need to break. And freedom from stereotype is probably one of the biggest things that we need to do as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar. Thanks for keeping to the time. So I am quickly moving to Jinath. So being a person who is working with community development, in your opinion or in your experience, what creative approaches are being taken at a community level and helping the members of society experiencing the freedom while balancing the diversity? If you can comment on.
Creative approaches, huh? Well, I feel defensive of kind of the comments that have just been preceded, especially about women continuing to put themselves in our own boxes. I think I resent lots of bootstrap language about like just taking ourselves out when we identify like what patriarchy is, and if we talk about it as like a foot on our necks, is it really our job to like shove that off, or should the people with their feet on our necks take it off? And so if we talk about moral duty in that sort of way, and so I just feel, yeah, like I want to take ownership of those aspects of the societal parts of like, where are the ways that we could all be better? So when we're thinking about, yeah, like the phrase women's empowerment, is it denying that we're powerful, or is it about tapping into our power that we might not realize that we have because we have always been put into these boxes? And to answer your question more directly about creative approaches in community work, so I've been leaning really into healing justice frameworks lately. And the way that I perceive that is seeing ourselves as individuals, as part of a collective, right? And that when one part, and as a collective like ecosystem too, and that when one part of the ecosystem is poisoned, like when the water is poisoned, the roots soak that up, then the tree starts dying, those sort of things that are reflected in our environment. And then also on that personal level, when our like personal ecosystems are suffering, well, one, that our earth is a reflection of how we treat it, and that we are a reflection of how the earth is in the moment, right? And that all of that can be traced back to our bodies. When we, as we're talking about these really abstract concepts of freedom, it takes a toll on our physical bodies as well. And that's something that I have been focusing a lot on, and there have been so much movement about, is like, when we can't breathe psychologically, we also can't physically breathe. And we feel that in our bodies, like the places in which we're suppressed will come up for us. The chronic pain that people experience in their lives from their jobs, like the anxieties that all of these compounded oppressions on our lives, whether it's from being a woman, whether it's from being a woman of color, whether it's being from being queer, all of my identities find a way back into its body. And so my approach in both an individual, societal, and communal level is like taking it back to healing, both as an individual, that when I get to breathe, when I get to breathe as an empowered woman, when I tap into my power and I'm someone who achieves my potential, that I get to be one part of that collective that's healing, and that maybe more women can join me. When I raise my voice, hopefully I can amplify and inspire other people too. So again, that like back and forth from the individual to the collective, how we bring other people up, how we liberate others through our own liberation by achieving our freedom. We're never all going to be free until everybody is free. So yeah.
Thank you, Jana. So as I have quite a less time left with me, so I quickly move to Meru. Meru, being associated with movie industry to journalism, even being a writer to activist. A simple question for you is that this gender diversity and freedom, is it a fad? Do you think any change is happening at a grassroots level?
Of course, none of this is a fad. It's an absolute necessity. And yes, things are changing. There is a lot of change. But the more things change, the same they seem to remain. As more and more women become more and more economically independent. So here, Manoranjan, I think I will stay with the phrase, the empowerment of women, because empowerment means when we say, a devoted society may give you a lot of spiritual empowerment and treat you like a Devi and put you on a pedestal, but that is not enough. What we are also looking for is economic empowerment, social and cultural empowerment. So I think I personally would like to stay with the phrase women's empowerment. And as I said, as more and more women become more and more economically independent, what is of concern is the less secure we are feeling, especially in public places and even at home. So we now have a bank account, but we are still beaten up we are still raped if we go out at 10 in the night. The classic example of Nirbhaya, you know, all she wanted to do was see a film with a friend of hers, and she was beaten up and kicked and killed. So the more articulate women become, I think the tendency in society out of, as Sankar said, fear of men giving up control, the more articulate we become, the more economically empowered we become, the more attempts will be to hit us and to hurt us and to silence us. So since there's a shortage of time, I wanted to give you the example of this lovely 20-year-old girl who is in Uttar Pradesh, you know, who's the daughter of a peasant and a tea seller. But by sheer hard work, she finally got a scholarship to study in the USA. But some men, some boys from her village chased her on a motorbike and hit her two-wheeler so hard that she fell on the ground, hurt her head and died. So who is responsible for the death of this lovely 20-year-old girl? Where then this raises questions of social justice. As incidents of rapes increase, the dream is to reach that utopian state of economic and social equity among citizens, instead of issues of insecurity among citizens in general, and women in particular continue to haunt us. So what kind of freedom do we have if we have only economic freedom or only political freedom? What the utopian dream is to be free in every which aspect of life. So insecurity in public places is personally for me of deep concern, and violence against women at home continues to be a cause of great concern for all of us when we talk about freedom. I will end this quote very quickly due to a shortage of time from another Urdu poet who commented in much more beautiful language. I tell it to you in English here. This is not the dawn that we had struggled for. Thank you.
Thank you, Meher. So thanks for the panel members for keeping the time. Vivek ji, do we have time to open it for any question, or should we wind up? I just wanted to say one thing before I hand it over. Thanks for all those beautiful comments. I believe personally there are a lot of things to be done, particularly at a family level, at a upbringing process, how we can sensitize people, particularly in the role expectations, and dismantle all the systems and remove those fears, and not fixing the gender with a role. So that is a lot of work is expected to be done at a home level. That's with that I would like to hand it over to Vivek ji.
It looks like Vivek is, where is he? He's there, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to see that if there is any question from the audience. So we have just running out of time, so we can take if there are any questions from the audience.
Vivek, Gopal here. Can I raise it for both Tasneem and Mehur? I think multiple levels. Tasneem, I had a Bangladeshi friend who was a Dhaka University player. He moved to India and stayed back here. So at multiple, meaning I'm born in a Hindu family, but some of my father's Brahmin family, some of my father's closest friends are Muslims. Some of my closest friends are Muslim. So, but I'm saying many of us are evolved, gone through, cross-cultural, all that exposures. We are able to appreciate each other, acknowledge each other, and, we are more inclusive. So how is it, I'm just saying I'm a HR person, how do we make, first of all, amongst ourselves more inclusive? then how do we make teams inclusive, and then organization inclusive, and a country inclusive? I'm debating. I am not sure. I think there are stalwarts here. I think Ramlingam is there, Susma was there. Many of them have worked across cultures. So the debate in my mind is all of us are struggling our own identity, team identity, cultural identity, or a community identity. So where is this? I'm not having an answer. A personal level, I get in well, but somewhere, how is the divide going to gradually go away? You know, academicians can work that way. Sushma is the earlier way she said, individuals can work way. What is the answer? Is activism is the answer? Is withdrawal is the answer? I mean, I'm getting confused. I don't have an answer. I just thought at least both of you are highly educated. What is your perspective? And either Amling or Professor Manoranjan, just a debate, not debate, a point to ponder. I don't have an answer. Thank you.
So Gopal, I was just wondering why you are asking that question to the women and not to the other man in the panel.
No. I'm just saying from there.
No, why should women answer that question? That's the question.
No, because I think Ramling, my perspective has been we have not given equal space many times is what I feel. Even in panels, I find we discriminate. I mean, I am talking about myself. So I'm saying, have they felt discriminated even in equal forums with educated men and from different community? I have not, but I'm saying, and then over to you and others.
No.
Yeah,
I'm not putting on the spotlight, but to me,
even if you put it's okay. I'm fine. I'm okay to be under.
To me, this is a very unconscious sign of patriarchy in action.
Yeah.
So, that's the way I look at it. So that's because in one sense we are saying you answer the question because it seems to be like your problem. No, it is our problem as well.
Yeah. Ramlinga, in fact, I used to anchor women leadership program. I used to first educate the men. It is not a problem of minority. In a large MNC I used to work, Ramling is smiling. We had 28% women. We are one of the best MNCs with women, this thing. We still found that the percentage was not adequate. So the problem is not with women. But that is my view. That's not the view I experienced. So I was wondering if they have an insight. You don't have to answer. But I'm struggling with this. In the class, I struggle. You know, anytime a girl student speaks, others don't allow her to speak. So how long it is going to continue? My father, 50 years back, wrote down 6 siblings, write down all sons, all daughters will get equal opportunity to study, grow, and do what they want to do. 50 years back. But today I'm still finding some of the other families I associate with, daughter can't go beyond this, son can't go beyond this. So this is, Ramling is eager to speak. Yeah, go ahead, any one of you. I'm just putting you in an answer given the constraint of time.
I think
I'm
very
happy
often
to answer.
I've been invited to participate and to sit shoulder to shoulder with patriarchs only to as a token gesture, so that the patriarch seems less mean and more generous. So, but then I'm happy for that occasion because then at least you get to say what you want to say. So it's very, also, you know, you were talking about inclusion. I think society at large is rather inclusive, and even, you know, with a very entrenched caste system, we still know how to treat each other with respect without making fun of the other person's eating habits and beliefs. The problem is at the top. The divisiveness, the exclusion agenda is not from within society. That has somehow, even, you know, in its very fractured way, like through the caste system, through, you know, elites, it has learned to live with each other without wanting to lynch the other person. Whereas the agenda at the top, the political agenda, seems to encourage divisiveness. So you have to look elsewhere. You know, the problem is elsewhere and not so much within society. You have to prevent the third forces that want to divide us, to stand up against.
Merul, I agree, but I want Tasneem's view because Professor Dev already, Professor Manoranjan, I know you are the moderator. Professor Dev already then talked about, because Chet was there, he talked about the racial divide in USA. So India has a cultural problem, I can leave it aside. US is all migrants population, most of them. I have friends from French, Persia, all types of countries. But when that comes, I wonder, is it a cultural creation? Is it a human creation? How you all see, if this is the thought leaders, these are the catalysts. Yeah, Taslim.
Yeah.
Am I making sense or am I talking like another man?
Yeah, you're kind of making sense. There's just a lot of things, right? It's really complicated. At first, I just want to go back for a second and to the other comment as well, where it's like, I appreciate you giving us space and asking us directly, because I will say I, for one, am very past a fight for equality. That is not something that resonates with me right now. All of my fights right now are about equity. I think equality may exist at some point very far down our human lineage one day, and I would like to fight for that too. But I think right now, if that's all we're settling for, then it doesn't actually level the playing field, because we're all recognizing, right, that the playing field is not even, in the same way that Chet described, that 400 years of enslavement of African descendant people on this continent means that the cards are so stacked against Black Americans on this continent. And in the same way, all across the world, the cards are so stacked against women in every culture on the planet. So, you know, and so I also appreciate the comment about just being a ceremonial gesture to put you next to a patriarch, right? And in so many ways, like even when I was told that this panel was going to be they were trying to have 2 men and 2 women on every panel, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense to have different to balance out perspectives, but why on this one? Why do we need men on this at all? And maybe a little bit was my first reaction. But going back to your question about being inclusive and more of that HR background, I'll say I don't know anything about the Indian work professional landscape at all. I've never been to India. So I can't speak to that at all, but I can speak to what makes an inclusive workplace here in the US for diverse work environments and diverse populations, because I am involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion work very specifically in different organizations. And I'll say that here, because we live in such a multicultural world, just knowledge of my culture a little bit feels very inclusive. When my colleagues remember that it is Eid and, you know, just wish me Eid Mubarak, that means a lot. That's like the first step though. And then the second step after that is not just acknowledgement, well, first being just like taking the time to research and build that empathy, right? Our knowledge is what builds empathy. And then the second one, the acknowledgement. And then third, accommodation, actually, like the fact that these things matter, right? So building in ways to be inclusive about different cultures, different identities, things like that. So giving women more airtime is one way to build equity. Giving people the freedom to take Eid off or like not schedule things on that day, because, you know, I always technically I have the freedom to like take the day off, right, whenever I want. But if like if I have important deadlines due at that day or have an event scheduled, then that's a way that like that structurally bounds me from taking the day off. So things like that. So being really mindful about other people, things going on in other people's lives, and those structural things is, yeah, I think, a path to inclusion.
Yeah, I just want, Vivek, I don't know you have time. Can I make a little controversial stuff for the panels? See, one of the things I'm realizing, D and I also means, I don't know whether you noticed, I don't have my right hand. I lost it in an accident. Vivek knows it. Manoranjan may remember. So what has happened, I'm now seeing more and more diversity at workplace with handicapped, differently able people. I think to me, caste, community is becoming less important now. Compassion, empathy. Like I have students, 5% students in the class, let's say they're differently able. To the peer, extremely bright. Can you believe they all are 90 percentile, 99 percentile? I never got 99 in a class. I don't know how Manoranjan faces it, whether Ramling and Shankar face that in their workshops. When I have one or two students who are differently abled, among majority who are physically fit, mentally fit, all that, it's such a, and I have to handle 75 people together in 90 minutes. You know the challenge I have? So that is where I'm saying another different, the D&I challenge I'm experiencing. One, we are talking about minority, majority in caste, community, sex, gender, etc. Another is differential abling. I don't know, Vivek, whether it falls under freedom, but I am finding, like I had one student last year. So that is one way of enabling. Shankar, Ramling and others can respond. I just want to throw it open.
I'm sorry, I need to leave because I have another session happening. So thank you very much. So thanks, Jila, Manoranjan for being in the panel.
Thank you. I have to go as well.
Yeah, and
Thank
Vivek,
you so
thank you
much.
very much for
Wonderful.
inviting. Gopal, Ramalingam, thank you.
Hey, Shankar,
yeah.
I appreciate only one point, that your social identity and the economic thing, these are the major things. It is not gender identity and freedom that we talk today. We talked about women's freedom fully, but title is given euphemistically as gender identity, and what is it behind it unconsciously? This I wanted to ask. And 1948, the father of our constitution, who was also law minister, presented a bill, and that was withdrawn subsequently for women's property right after 70 years now Supreme Court. All the courts also slept over 70 years, and ultimately now Supreme Court passes an order 1 month back. And these are the things, unconscious process that are taking place. It is not men giving power to women, and it is men giving up power wherever it is not relevant. See, this is the only thing I want to say. We go by only social identity, and we are not going by psychological. Psychological identity is purely for self-growth. And social identity is the most important thing. Man, woman is more importantly to be addressed, rather than feminine and masculine that is within ourselves for our self-growth. This is some of the things that was brought and not very deeply dealt with the Shankar. That's why I thought that at least I should speak up.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you very much. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ram, and thank you, Shankar. So I would like to thank all of you, and especially Mr. Gopal. You bring a good point, and you wrap up at the end of the session. So, so what we have seen today is some managing space for ourselves and for others too. That is very important when we are talking about freedom. And we need to claim our independence. We need to create good support mechanisms, networking, and able to exert our freedom. And Angela was talking about that freedom is not about yourself only. It's all about the community. That if the community is also free, and it can be at the different levels. We have seen people talking about the social level, economic level, and the psychological level. It's not at the physical level. That's the beauty of our discussion, that we touch base on so much spaces, but because of the time constraint, I think we are not able to do justice with the topic itself. But the awareness and the understanding, I think, is the first step, and we from the first step perspective only. And some of the other points which raised that everyone is having masculine and feminine part in herself or in himself. So we need to recognize those aspects. And freedom is something that the real question around is that
Vivek, your voice is not clear.
My voice is not clear. Is it audible now?
It's still breaking.
Okay. Okay. I will not take much time. So on behalf of that Holy International SanchitSmriti and Aranya Tattva, Smart Talks and Coffee Kitab are our partners in arranging this summit. So on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank all of you, being in India or in US, that you have taken time and especially Jinat is I think it's 3 a.m. 3:30 for her. She is here with us. So thank you all of us, all of you. So I just want to give a small introduction. SanchitSmriti is a non-profit organization working for the human rights issues and in India, especially they have an head office in Lucknow. So they are it stands for nurturing for the child education, and then they are digitalizing libraries for the students. So they are working especially in those areas. And Quality International is an organization which works on the transformational leadership, and it funded by Dr. Dan and Chet Sisk. So they are promoting and training for globally with respect to the transformation of leadership. So with this, I would like to say once again thanks. And VivekPadalia is I have shared about the VivekPadalia, that what we do in India. We are working in the space of HR, making HR as well as in consulting and the projects. So where we are helping organizations, people to transform their life or helping them to live in that. So that is the motto with which we are conducting this workshop and this summit, and hope you have enjoyed today's session. Tomorrow we are going to meet with our new at 11 a.m. with 2 sessions. First session is about in the corporate world, more with respect to workplace, and the second session is talking about is the plenary session, where we will see what is emerging out of this summit, and we will create a white paper later on, and we will submit and share with all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Manoranjan. Thank you, Kinat, and Swati, Dinesh, Deeksha, and Nehru. Hope you had a great time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vivek. Excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day and good night.
Okay.